Welcome back to NBC10 Boston. So we continue to watch the developing situation. Brand new tornado warning has been issued now for southeast New Hampshire, Rockingham County. This storm is over Deerfield, New Hampshire. It's moving off to the north-northeast. It's going to split Deerfield and Nottingham, head up toward Northwood. It crosses Route 4. It'll end up over 202 and head toward Barrington. Tornado warning will remain in effect here until 10:15 this morning or until it's canceled sooner. We can take you over to the velocity plot. This shows you where the center of rotation is, and this is exactly what the government is looking at when they issue the tornado warning. This thing is just coming out of the center of Raymond now. It's just north of Harriman Hill Road, and the center of rotation is where you see the collision of the green and red happening. So north of Old Cart Road, Harriman Hill Road, headed off to the north-northeast. Deerfield Road will be up next. Nottingham Road will be up next. You should be sheltered down in the basement or the lowest level of your home away from windows. This will also include the Nottingham area. All of you want to take shelter indoors away from windows, ideally in the basement as the now tornado-warned storm continues to move off to the north and east. It's worth noting that at this point, we have no indication of a tornado touchdown. This is radar indicated, but oftentimes through our modern technology of radar, you're able to actually see that storm developing before it gets to the location. I'm loading up rotation tracks. Our in-house tracking of rotation not picking up on anything at this point. So right now, really, what you're looking at is, again, the rotation indicated on radar, the storm making its way to the north-northeast, Nottingham, Deerfield, and Barrington all in the path, a likely cross of the rotation over Route 4, the center of that rotation likely to cross somewhere over Northwood as it comes by. This is not the only area that we have that's under warnings right now. This is the latest tornado warning that came out just seconds ago during our latest commercial break, but you remain under a severe thunderstorm warning along the Route 2 corridor, extending up now to the New Hampshire border. This severe thunderstorm warning issued also because the storm was indicating it had some broad scale rotation. It was not tight enough to be tornado warned. We can show you the rotation inside the storm now. It almost looks more impressive to some extent than the one over southern New Hampshire, doesn't it? But there is a difference, and the difference here, just so you know from an analysis perspective, is that you're talking about a space between the red and the green, and that means that you do not have tight enough rotation at this point to warrant a tornado warning. So that's why you don't see a tornado warning out of the storm that's over Leominster, Fitchburg, lifting up through Townsend. You'll be next, but you should be sheltered indoors away from windows. You don't need to be down in the basement when there's no indication of a tornado. You do, however, still need to be sheltered indoors. I can also go on to tell you that areas like Sterling, you are now underneath that severe thunderstorm warning, but you can see for yourself that most of the heavy rain, the worst of the storm, is shifted off to the north and east for now. Of course, heavy rain has been a major issue with these storms, right? You've got downpours across the area that are causing ponding of water out of the roadways and highways. Hydroplaning a concern with that as well, so that's something to be aware of. But for now, and most imminently, the concern goes to the brand new tornado warning, now issued by the National Weather Service until 10:15 this morning from Raymond to Deerfield to Nottingham to Barrington. Raymond, you are in the warning. If your phone is just going off right now, though, I can show you, you are actually behind the storm. Same thing on the northwest side of Epping and on the east side of Candia. You're in the tornado warning. Your phone may be alerting you. Your television may have alerted you, and that's why you turn to us, and we appreciate that. You are behind the storm, and you are in the clear. But when you start getting up around Deerfield and Nottingham, you are at the center of this storm, and the storm is moving off of Nottingham Road, tracking north-northeast to the Melrose Beach neighborhood. North Nottingham will remain on the east side. This rotation likely to split between Freeman Hall Road and center of Northwood up to Route 202 at Bow Lake Road. Anywhere in between there, centered on West Barrington and Northwood, going to be the areas of greatest concern. West Nottingham, you should be down in the basement with this storm as the center of rotation begins to lift overhead. Brand new scan came in here. We get a new scan every 60 seconds, which means another chance to analyze exactly what the storm's doing. We see a little bit of an increase in the speed inside the wind of this storm, and this really goes to kind of lay one point down, which is the fact that even in a tornado watch situation, we are in a tornado watch for favorable conditions for tornado development through 3 p.m., you can still get straight line damaging winds. So what I'm looking at with this storm now is some of the rotation that was tight enough to warrant the tornado warning appears to be breaking up a little. That doesn't mean it's permanent. These storms can cycle, they can weaken and then strengthen. So you need to remain in the basement in the path of this storm. But you also tend to see strong wind developing that can be straight line wind. regardless of the fact of whether the storm is rotating or not. And that's why even when it's a tornado warning, you have to be concerned certainly about the fact that you may be looking at what will end up being at least damaging wind nonetheless that makes its way through. There's that center of the storm now as it lifts its way over West Nottingham and continues northward. I've put a storm track on here for you so you can see exactly where the storm is heading. Now, it's unlikely it will hold its rotation, warranting a tornado warning all the way up through Middleton, but you can certainly see if we put the towns and times on here that Northwood is impacted at 10:07, Barrington at 10:15, Stratford at 10:23, and Farmington at 10:32. There's a very low chance of hail. It's a very warm atmosphere, but notice the maximum precipitation rate of the storm, nearly 6 inches per hour. Remarkable storm as it continues to move to the north and east, and a tornado warning continues until 10:15 for those areas indicated in Rockingham County. Let's bring back Tanya now. Tanya, I know you've been watching this, plus storms now, including the severe thunderstorm that's coming in through northern Worcester County. That one expected to continue to move off to the north and east as well. And as I toss it over to you, that storm with the severe thunderstorm warning, we're watching Fitchburg, Lunenburg, Townsend, and Pepperell all in the path here over the course of about the next 15 to 20 minutes. Over to you, Tanya.
Precisely. Thank you, Matt. Exactly the area that I want to talk about, because we do have a possible rotation here as well, just north of Worcester in Fitchburg, Leominster, heading into the direction towards Pepperell. And this is exactly where we have strong localized wind gusts that may be gaining up to 60 miles per hour strength. The velocity is clashing here, as you can see, with the green and the red colors that we've been explaining on warning. But you also have plenty more coming your way as the heavy rainfall is also coming down into this region. I do want to try and show you if we have any of the reflectivity. Give me 1 second. And let's see if we have any rotation tracks. Yeah, we actually do, from Princeton into Leominster. And that's exactly the area that we are concerned about at the moment. There is a severe thunderstorm warning. We don't have a tornado warning, but we do see some possible rotation here reflected. This other tornado warning that we have across parts of New Hampshire into Rockingham and Stratford County, however, remains in effect, and it should continue in effect at least until 10:15 a.m. If we head south, though, we start to see more prominent colors here. Straight line winds that still remain a possibility. Up to Pepperell, we're going to continue monitoring the direction to which these cells will continue to make their way towards the east-northeast. And you know, your whole team has been working. Pamela Gardner is also on duty looking at the radar and examining what's been heading ahead. So, Pamela, I'm going to go ahead and send it over to you.
Sure, of course, Tanya. And, you know, the most concerning cell right now is that tornado warned storm. That goes until 10:15, and that issued by National Weather Service in gray. So radar indicated there in Rockingham, Stratford, New Hampshire until 10:15. And there's some rotation with that storm as we dive back in. Raymond, Deerfield, Barrington, this storm is moving to the north and east. As we get a new scan here, about every 60 seconds, Nottingham, Deerfield, Northwood, Route 4, Barrington along 202. This storm is rotating, so you have the green and the red, and that's an indication where you have bright colors close together that there's potential rotation and it may touch the ground as a tornado. Green going towards the radar, red is winds going away from the radar, and where you get them very, very close together, bright colors and touching, that's the best chance of having potentially a tornado. So what to do in a tornado warning? As we stick with you there in New Hampshire, tornado warning means it's imminent. Take action. Tornado could be spotted. In this case, it's indicated by radar. Head to the basement, lowest level of your home or building, center of the building too, away from walls, away from windows. And the other concerning part is that not only do we have these tornado warnings and these issues too, but we have flash flood warnings overlapping some of this situation. And so some of the low-lying areas, unfortunately, are starting to flood out, as flash flood warnings have been prominent since yesterday across parts of New Hampshire and have just really spread across the area. As we take a bigger picture, I want to show you all of the active weather going on. We have flood warnings. Those are flash flood warnings in the green. We also have that tornado warning in the pink. We have a flood watch for almost all of New England, and then a tornado watch for all of southern and western parts of New England, most of Massachusetts too, and a severe thunderstorm warning as well. The most serious situation right now is, of course, that tornado warning, which goes until 10:15. Again, if you're just joining us, tornado warning in New Hampshire, Stratford, Rockingham counties until 10:15. This is radar indicated. I don't have any signals of any storm reports or anything on the ground. It's just unfolding, frankly. So you want to get to the lowest level of your home. Let's zoom right in here to the areas of the tightest rotation. That's around Deerfield Road, Flutter Street, Nottingham Road. Let's go north and east of there here. North Nottingham, West Nottingham, Melrose Beach, Northwood. Again, we're in New Hampshire, Route 202, West Barrington, and then north and east of there along 202, Bow Lake Village, and let's see, Province Road. So as we get another scan, let's check out that rotation. Go back down here. So it's still holding together. It's not lightening up, and so we will stick with this tornado warning until 10:15 at least. Now, downwind, if this holds together, you may get an additional tornado warning. So who else is up to see some action? Rochester, New Hampshire, Stratford, Somersworth, potentially Lebanon, Farmington, right along 202. It seems to be going right along 202. So we'll be watching this, certainly. Severe thunderstorm warning overlaps, but that's the center of that storm is about to move out of that location. And I'm going to put some storm tracks on here and try to get you some other locations. We have time of arrival, West Barrington approximately 10:13, Barry's Corner 10:22, Midborough Corner at 10:26. So we're watching this tornado warned storm, and that's across New Hampshire right now. And let's try to put on a list of points of interest. So what's around here? What's under this? We have Austin Kate Academy. If you are familiar with this area and you live in southern New Hampshire, we're also on NECN simulcasting too, because we want to keep you up to date, and also here on NBC10 Boston. We have other locations. We have Barrington Elementary School. We have Crown Point School. We have Agonic School. That's just outside the tornado warned area, but that's still potentially in your path as we have this situation. Hey, we're also watching what's going on across Leominster and Pepperell. You still have a severe thunderstorm warning until 10:15. This area of rotation is starting to tighten up just a little bit. There are a couple areas that are starting to touch where you get the green and the reds very close together, so that's concerning. But the National Weather Service has a tornado possible tag on this warning with the severe thunderstorm warning, 60-mile-per-hour winds moving through Townsend, Pepperell, Groton, and this situation unfolding as it heads across the New Hampshire border towards Nashua, Amherst, and Londonderry too. So the big picture shows that there's lots of action going on. We have those severe thunderstorm warnings. We have the tornado warning until 10:15, and tons of rainfall, flooding rainfall all across Connecticut, all across southern New Hampshire. Rain rates will exceed perhaps 2 to 4 inches per hour, latest from the Weather Prediction Center, which is something we've been talking about for the last couple of days. So southeastern Massachusetts, you haven't seen anything. No, nothing across Plymouth, Scituate, Cape Cod. But later today, the flooding rain threat is going to head this way towards south and east areas. So you have time to prepare, get tents inside, get bounce houses inside. If you had a graduation party, a birthday party planned for today, you don't want to have any of that furniture outside either. There's some gusty winds, straight line wind potential with any of these storms that move through as well. The most concerning area right now is New Hampshire, and that's where we have a tornado warning until 10:15 as that storm lifts to the north and east at about 30 miles per hour. That was radar indicated here, 10:15, Rockingham, Stratford counties in New Hampshire. And as we put on the rotation signals here, this is just about to cross over Route 4 into Northwood. and eventually into Barrington, right around 202 as well. So that center of rotation here. There are a couple areas that are concerning. We do have some space in between, but nevertheless, always want to treat it like there could be a tornado on the ground. And of course, there's a lot of rain around it too. So rain wrapped completely, even with light rainfall. And then the heaviest rain bands are around there too. Something else we like to look at here it is the correlation coefficient, and I don't see anything in terms of debris wafted into the air. Sometimes we can pick that up. That's promising. We're going to stay with this. And Tanya is standing by once again. Tanya, what do you see? Anything new with the chat? I haven't seen any storm reports. Of course, this is ongoing, and we have flash flood warnings on top of a tornado warning.
That's right. And see those flash flood warnings that should remain in effect until the evening hours. We're tracking additional showers, additional downpours, and the possibility for isolated storms that become severe. And we're monitoring that same one you were just talking about, Pamela, over Raymond and Deerfield now, especially over parts of the far north of this polygon over Berrigan and Norwood, with that precise rotation in the atmosphere that remains. It keeps its strength. I also want to talk about this cell over northern Worcester County, now getting closer and closer into northwestern Middlesex County, into Pepperell. This precise cell also has some rotation. Look at its prominent colors too, and that red and green we were just talking about. Green indicating towards the radar, red indicating away from the radar, and how it's depicting that rotation in the atmosphere. We do have some rotation tracks just south of it. Leominster, we were talking about this a few minutes ago, and the direction in which it's headed, it's north. And the velocity which it's taking is around 30 miles per hour of a movement. But the winds it has with it may be reaching up to 60 miles per hour. And it's over Lunenburg right now. It's heading closer and closer into Townsend. And these are the areas that you should remain in shelter, only because we're looking at this rotation, and you don't want to be in the middle of this, during a scenario in which we're talking about a severe thunderstorm warning and possible rotation within that same cell. And yes, the National Weather Service has been talking about possible rotation precisely here. A tornado warning radar indicated now on this precise area. Okay, the National Weather Service has made it official. We were just talking about how Pepperell, Townsend is under that polygon. You'll see in pink, including these areas. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the rotation where exactly it is at. Leominster, you're out of the woods with it, but you are looking at Townsend, Pepperell being in the path of this possible rotation. And the winds that also stretch up all the way to Brookline. And remember, this cell could be leading up to 60 mile per hour wind gust. While we do expect to see additional rotation across parts of the northeast towards southern New Hampshire, it's now this new cell that has us under the tornado warning in effect through 10:30 a.m. And Matt Noyes is also working hard, monitoring the situation, looking at the latest reports. So Matt, I'm going to go ahead and send it over to you, see what you can tell us.
All right, Tanya, thanks very much. So right now, new tornado warning that's going to be in effect here, as you mentioned, has just come out from northeast Worcester County, or really northwest Middlesex County. Townsend and Pepperell, we need to get down to the basement. Townsend, there are strong signals that you've got rotation developing directly overhead. The center of that rotation, just over South Street and Turnpike Road right now. If we zoom the view out a little bit more, you can actually see that it's over Old Meeting House Road, Depot Street Extension, Greeley Road, coming up toward Highland Street. This is right at the center of Townsend. We want you tucked down in the basement, away from windows at the lowest level of your home if you don't have a basement. The concern is we've seen a couple of areas actually now that have started to take off with the potential for rotation. You've got one on the north side, which is just northeast of the center of Townsend right now. And that storm, you can see where the red and green are coming together. You've got another area, though, if we go farther south, it's linked up right over Townsend Road. That's moving due north at the intersection of Townsend Road and Warren Road. We want you all down in the basement, much of Townsend running out to Pepperell. The basement, the safest place to be and where you want to be right now. But here's the thing, Tanya. I was looking at the radial velocity or the plot of wind. What's interesting is if we stop looking just for rotation and instead say we want to look at where the strongest wind is, there is a very strong straight line damaging wind component with this storm as well. Right over Pepperell right now, you've got the tornado warning, but you're talking about what right now are wind velocity estimates that are on the order of about 50 to 55 miles per hour that are coming through, and that would just be straight line wind alone. So regardless of whether or not you actually end up with tornado spin up, it would appear at this point as though you've got a real good burst of wind that's just coming on the north side of Pepperell now, wrapping around this storm. It's going to come into North Pepperell and South Brookline. Essentially what's happening with this storm storm is you've got wind that's coming in on the front side of it that I can draw in for you that would be coming out of the southeast. You've got wind on the back side that's going to be coming down from the northwest. So obviously you're concerned for rotations in the middle, but what I'm really focused on here as well is out in advance of the storm. I mean, you've just got so much wind that's indicated right now that's just lifting over the north and northwest side of Pepperell that you have to consider there's got to be some damaging wind that's going on with that. In terms of the rotation tracks you were just showing us, so here's how this works. Basically, our system goes in and looks for any indication that there is ongoing rotation inside the storm. This is on par with the last tornado warning that we had earlier this morning across the Maynard area that then lifted off to the northeast and made its way up around Lowell. You've got similar rotation indications now. And if you look at the street level on this, again, we zoom in, you can see where that rotation is tracked over the same places I was just telling you, Old Meeting House Road, now coming up over Highland Street, continuing to move north along Wallace Hill Road and Meadow Road, Warner Road, Townsend Hill Road, Hillside Drive, North End Road, going farther to the north-northeast. You all want to be down in the basement. You are in the path of this storm, which is showing clear rotation on radar and has warranted the tornado warning from the National Weather Service. Now, if I go backwards in time, this is your debris indicator. You're looking for any signs that there was debris lofted in the air, and that would be any blue that shows up in that center of rotation as it comes over Townsend and Pepperell, and you don't see that. There certainly has been quite an upheaval in the atmosphere going on, but you're not seeing that same indication where you've got a type of debris that's been lofted into the air. This is a three-dimensional view of the storm. What this allows us to do is see where the greatest building of the storm has been happening. One thing that you'll see is it's built up to about 20,000 feet at the core. What we see is it's straight up and down. This tells us two things. One, it tells us the storm is probably going to what we call pulse, which means it gets strong for a little while and then it eases off a bit after that. The other thing is it's got very heavy rain. When you've got a core that's stacked like that, you know you've got to be pounding down rain. And in fact, right over Townsend, running up to Brookline right now, those purples you see, that's 4 to 5 inch per hour rainfall rates that are coming down. You're putting this onto already saturated ground, which means flash flooding becomes a concern for us, and that's why in a lot of these spots flash flood warnings have been issued simultaneously. We were tracking a tornado warning into southern New Hampshire. That tornado warning has come down now, so that has been allowed to expire early. The storm itself coming over Rochester and Farmington, heavy rain at 202 and running up 16. But again, the thing that we were talking about is you get these pulses in the storm that happen. They flare up and then they wind down. So it's during the flare-up that you're of most concern. Let's get the latest scan now, because every 60 seconds we have a brand new radar scan that comes in. And here is the center of this storm in rotation now, coming up between Ball Road, Haynes Road, Cranberry Street, Chestnut Street, and Wheeler Street, continuing toward Lawrence Street as the storm itself is headed up toward the state line, coming out of Townsend now, making its way over portions of North Pepperell and continuing up toward West Hollis. So although not yet a tornado warning for southern New Hampshire at South Brookline and West Hollis, we suggest that you prepare for a possible tornado warning to be issued, because if this rotation does not show signs of weakening soon, and there is the brand new warning. There it is, came out this second. So new tornado warning now extended north of this area of rotation, Brookline, New Hampshire, West Hollis, New Hampshire. You are in the path of this storm. Brand new tornado warning just issued by the National Weather Service takes this rotating storm where it's been over Townsend, lifts it up now over South Brookline and West Hollis, and will continue the tornado warning now for the next 30 minutes or so. You've got the new tornado warning until 10:45. Hollis, New Hampshire, running up through Brookline up to South Merrimack. If your phone is just alerting you and you're just joining us, you are watching NBC10 Boston's continuing coverage of multiple tornado warnings that have been in effect this morning. We've been covering several of them as they come through. This latest one now just lifting across the Mass-New Hampshire border. The center of the storm has just passed through the east side of Townsend. If you are watching us in Townsend and I put you down in the basement, you are behind the rotation of the storm, and you are clear to come out of the basement, with the exception of those of you who are right along the New Hampshire state border, North End Road over to Lawrence Street and Wheeler Street. You continue to be underneath the rotation. That area of rotation will continue to Townsend Hill Road on the west side, Ironworks Lane and Oak Hill Road on the center of rotation, and West Hollis Road is going to be the eastern delineation as it comes up over the state line. You can see the areas we go farther northeast across across where we expect the storm to track through South Brookline, through Flint Meadow Drive, through Pepperell Road, through Sawtell Road, Sargent Road. We all want to be tucked down in the basement or the lowest level of our home, away from outside windows, because we are in the path of this tornado-warned storm. So what does it mean when you get this tornado warning? We know a tornado watch is in effect until 3 p.m. The tornado watch, meaning that you've got conditions favorable for tornado development. A tornado warning means that a tornado appears to be imminent. It is the highest level of warning. Either the tornado has been spotted, in this case it has not been, or it's been indicated on radar, in this case it has been. And that means there absolutely is rotation inside the storm that's strong enough to make a funnel. And that's why we say you need to head to the basement or lowest level of the home or the center of the building. The reason for that, because we know the sky is rotating. We know that there is spin in the air. We know it could produce a tornado. We don't know whether it will make it all the way down to ground level. And while we continue to cover the tornado warning that now is in effect across Hollis, New Hampshire, as the storm lifts out of Townsend, Massachusetts, we note another severe thunderstorm warning. This severe thunderstorm warning on a brand new cell that's coming out of Stafford, Connecticut. It is traveling along in just north of Interstate 84. It will come through Sturbridge and Munson and make its way through Southbridge. This storm at this point does not have a tornado warning issued with it. However, it is showing broad signs of rotation, which means it's a well-developed storm capable of damaging winds. So that's something that we'll be concerned with and continuing to watch. Some of these storms have continued to strengthen to the point that you end up getting the tornado warning issued with them. Some of them have not. Let's go ahead and put on the automated storm tracks for you, give you an idea of where these storms are heading. You can see that northeast motion on the one that's coming out of Sturbridge. Again, I think it's probably going to take a track just west of what you see there, coming up over I-84 into Sturbridge and Munson. Here's the storm, great storm track here coming in from the system on this one that's the tornado-warned storm. In terms of towns and times and where we see this going, it's coming out of Townsend, Massachusetts now. Brookline momentarily, Hollis, New Hampshire within the next 10 minutes, Milford, New Hampshire would be in the line of path around 10:35 or 10:38. Your precipitation rate is about 2-inch per hour rain, so you've got flooding rain with it. There is a small chance of hail, but the sky is very warm today. It's tropical air, and actually it's when you get the tropical air that you end up with the issues that sometimes can lead to the tornado spin-up. So if we go ahead and zoom in for you again on this active tornado warning that continues, you can see the center of the storm now lifting out of northern Massachusetts, just crossing the state line, making its way toward Hollis, New Hampshire, and that is going to be the area that we're focused on next. We'll go back over to the velocity where the red and green indicates air that is rotating if it's close together. There is the center of rotation, still not across the state line yet, which is why we've been saying that if you are on the north side of Townsend, if you're around Boynton Street, if you're around Bemis Road, if you're around Brookline Street, if you're running up Brookline Street to the state line, you need to remain in your basement. The other thing I pointed out earlier is that we have this big burst of strong straight line wind on the east side of the storm. I should say it is not in any way unusual for us to get strong straight line winds that come on the east side of one of these storms. They're feeding up from the south-southeast. They're coming out of North Pepperell right now, and this would be separate from the area of rotation. So your area of rotation is very clear where the red and green come together over Boynton Street. That is moving off to the north-northeast, but your other area of strong wind is on the east side of the storm, and that's largely just fueled by the fact that you've got the air flowing so rapidly into the storm itself. Let me get you switched over to the radar that's a little bit more conventional, that you're more used to seeing, and you can see where we're talking about right now. We're looking right now at the center of the storm that's coming directly up over Brookline Street and just about to cross that state line into West Hollis. If we zoom out a little bit more, that new tornado warning that's going to continue all the way up through Milford, New Hampshire. We think that probably the center of that rotation will come up toward, eventually, if it holds together, Cricket Corner in South Merrimack, making its way up toward Lawrence Corner. Litchfield, you are just outside of the tornado warning. Merrimack, you are just outside of the tornado warning. Should the rotation continue to move north and that tornado warning be extended again, that would be one area that we would need to put down in the basement. Wheat Lane, you are underneath the center of where we expect this rotation to go. You can see in the latest update now, over the course of the last 60 minutes, continuing now just crossing the state line into West Hollis. This is expected to continue its north-northeast motion at about 30 miles per hour. We'll bring in Tanya again. Tanya, over to you.
Hey, Matt, thank you so much. Yeah, we keep monitoring this situation, and I want to show you exactly how things look like in the radar, just a broad view. We see the tornado warning that stretches from northern Massachusetts into southern New Hampshire. We see a severe thunderstorm warning across northern Connecticut and taking place, crossing much of Worcester County, with additional flash flood warnings overtaking parts of Connecticut, southern Hampton County, and southern New Hampshire. So let's zoom in into what we see across the Southwest, and that is in Connecticut, Stafford, Tolland. You're experiencing heavy rain, but we also have possible rotation here in this area. Looking and depicting again the colors that are pretty standard right now. The green representing again that movement toward the radar, red away from the radar, and it's clashing at the moment right now when you see the divisionary line across northern Connecticut and into parts of Hampton County towards also parts of Worcester County, and that should continue with a northeast movement. Now, aside of all that, we're also tracking torrential rainfall with rainfall rates that go up to about 4 inches per hour. We already have reports of about 3 inches per hour in Bristol over parts of Connecticut. Now, we'll take a look at Pepperell again, and that rotation that we were just talking about south of Milford that keeps tracking into the northeast, and that has Hollis under the influence and under the possible impact within the next minute. So remember, this tornado warning should go into effect through 10:45 a.m. We keep tracking the rotation tracks that move off just to the south of Brookline. That's where they've stopped. We haven't seen much of the additional tracks in the last, let's say, 5 minutes. But again, we keep monitoring the intensity of the heavy rainfall and the possible rotation that may continue pushing into the northeast. So you still want to remain on guard. You want to remain weather aware. You want to stay inside, seek shelter if you're under that area that, again, encompasses Pepperell and especially parts of Hollis now, Brookline under that same area of high danger that should also be pushing northeastward. Let's take a look at what things look like again in a broad view over parts of Hartford. You see the heavy rain that's now exiting and heading more towards Tolland. Tolland receiving the heavy rain, and taking a look at the rotation that we were also just talking about a few minutes ago. Let's go ahead and zoom in there. There you go. So just in Union, you start to see that same rotation. I'm going to go ahead and take the lapse in the last hour, and let's see if I can show you in a slower movement how things are looking like here, which is also pretty concerning. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about straight line winds, another one of those possibilities that, as Matt just mentioned, you don't really have to have the rotation in order to have danger. I mean, the effect that it can provide to homes, and especially mobile homes, and the danger out there for roofs as well. And you do want to make sure that you stay away from windows, from doors. Heavy rainfall, another one of those factors that's adding into the chance for flash flooding. We're about 4 inches rainfall rates per hour, and that all stretches into northern Connecticut, southern Hampton County, and part of Worcester. The rotation that's still in place north of Pepperell, so still you want to remain in shelter. Should be moving northeastward pretty soon, but here you go. Hollis again, Brookline are still under the potential risk, and the rotation tracks that are now making their way into the north. So this is actually taking place over Hollis Road as well. West Hollis, another one of those areas that have already been affected by those rotation tracks. I mean, this is a serious situation, life-threatening conditions that should remain into the afternoon. We ourselves, as an entire team, we actually had a reunion outdoors today. It absolutely had to be canceled due to these conditions that you definitely want to consider throughout the rest of the morning into the middle of the afternoon, with another possible round on the evening hours. Pamela Gardner, I know she's standing by as well. Pamela, I mean, we're talking about the potential for the heavy rain and the potential for those isolated strong to severe storms. So you really got to remain on guard on what sort of warning you are in, whether it's a severe weather warning, whether it's a tornado warning, and the shelter that you must seek in case it's a flood warning as well.
Absolutely, Tanya. And we've been experiencing this morning where we have a tornado warning overlapping with flash flood warnings. And so with the flash flood warning, the danger is low-lying areas where you don't want to get to the lowest level if you happen to have water issues, or the tornado warning, you need to be in the lowest level. So it's kind of opposite, and it's tough to assess what to do, but you want to seek shelter no matter what from the flash flooding and from a tornado warning. That tornado warning, we've been showing you, Tanya has been going through the radar there. That warning continues until 10:45 for Hillsborough, New Hampshire. So in this situation, you do not have a flash flood warning that's active at the moment necessarily, unless they've issued a new one here. Let me check that, double check on that. And you do have a flash flood warning. So I misspoke on that. So you have a tornado warning with a flash flood warning. So use your best judgment here. If you have a home or building here with the lowest level, basement is best spot to be during a tornado warning. If not, the center of the building, lowest level, away from walls and windows as much as possible. So put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Hollis here, we're getting some lightning strikes, and I've been watching the lightning. There hasn't been a lot. It's been a very tropical-like system that's been moving through, which is normal. You don't see a lot of lightning perhaps, but we're starting to see an uptick in some of that lightning, especially just to the west in Nashua. So that's an indication the storm is still strong and strengthening perhaps a little bit more. That rotation right here is right over Hollis, and you have the bright Christmas colors close together, the reds and the green indicating the wind's going towards the radar, and the reds are going away from the radar. So where you have those colors very close together, that's where you have the chance for possible rotation. We're getting some touching with those colors too, right around Hollis, and so that's the concerning area where we may see a tornado that touches the ground. Do we know? No, we don't know for sure right now. Nothing's been spotted, and frankly, it's too dangerous to go out and try to spot it because it is completely rain-wrapped all over Hollis with torrential rainfall rates that are just tropical, ridiculous. Dew points have been running in the 70s. Here are the rainfall rates, and we're like 2 to 4 inches per hour, almost 5 inches per hour as you go north of Hollis, near Boston Post Road, near South Merrimack. Again, we're looking in New Hampshire here, if you're just joining us, Wheat Lane and down to Depot Road in Hollis on the east side now, you have 2 to 4 inch rainfall rates per hour. So as the storm lifts to the northeast, at about 30 miles an hour. It is cycling. So at one point we had some still concerning rotation right here around Hollis, but also some other areas here are starting to touch too. And so that's concerning that we could have a pulsating situation with a tornado that touches perhaps, brief spin up, that's what we mean by brief spin ups, and then goes back into the cloud and then storm cycles through and another tornado forms. So we're watching what's going on with this and just putting some locations. If you're near NECN, New Hampshire, Thornton's Ferry School, if you're familiar with Amherst Middle School, this is downwind, so you want to get into your safe spot. Southern New Hampshire University, this is right over you right now. St. Francis School, this is also moving through this location as well, and this rotation is still holding together. We also have downwind, not in the warning area, but the warning could be extended. It goes until 10:45, but this storm is moving pretty quickly, starting to almost push out of the warning area. But Busick Lane Town Beach, you have Merrimack Middle School, Weston Park heads up, you have Faith Episcopal Church. It is Sunday, so folks may be at Mass or at church. If you have friends or family, try calling them. Phones may be off, but this is a situation where they need to know what's going on. So we're in southern New Hampshire here, Brookline, Hollis, Milford, New Hampshire, all under this tornado warning until 10:45. And flash flood warning overlapping that until 10:30. And so where we have this situation with flooded out roads too on top, and then the rotation, potential tornado moving over, you still want to get into your safe space, use your best judgment, lowest level of your home or building away from walls or windows. What else is going on across the area? Well, we have a lot of action going on all over the Northeast, frankly, and we're also on NECN, so keeping you updated. We have flash flood warnings that extend from southern New Hampshire to central New Hampshire now, but nothing in terms of rotation, no flash flooding in Maine at the moment. Across much of Massachusetts, the active weather we have going on right now is a severe thunderstorm warning until 11 o'clock. This encompasses the northwest side of Worcester. This encompasses Tolland and Stafford, Connecticut, too. And with this storm, we've been watching some broad rotation with it. And tornado possible is the tag from the National Weather Service. Over Wales, perhaps some broad rotation going on Southbridge, I-20 over the Mass Pike, heading towards Brookfield, North Brookfield, Leicester. We want to treat this as a potential spin-up situation where we could quickly have a spin-up tornado. The most serious situation, though, and as we get the latest scan, we still have the colors touching the red and the green. And so the rotation out here in New Hampshire, we're keeping a close watch on it too. And we're also watching the chance for straight line wind damage. Even if that alleged tornado goes up into the clouds, you have some straight line winds of, and they won't come on because I have all those warnings on, but we're seeing some intense wind speeds here. Tanya, and I know you're back, you're watching this. Have you seen any reports? I haven't seen any reports from anyone, which is good. We don't want people to go out. But this is concerning certainly across southern New Hampshire with that tornado warning until 10:45 and flash flooding on top.
Yeah, that's right. And see, thank you so much, Pamela. I do want to mention that we have a report of over 2.5 inches of rainfall already received in Bristol County since midnight. And that's per a spotter call. We do have more rotation happening here precisely in this cell just north of Tolland and entering parts of Hampden County and Worcester County. It's exiting Worcester County where you start to see the strong winds again and possible straight line winds that we should be watching throughout the rest of this afternoon, along with the heavy rainfall that, as we mentioned, rainfall rates are running above 3 inches per hour with these particular cells, and Stafford is under the precise area where we're talking about possible 4-inch per hour rates. That goes up to parts of Brimfield into Massachusetts. Taking a look at where the heaviest of the rainfall, the dark pink colors that go up all the way to Connecticut into Killingworth, New Haven, just north of New Haven, you have this going on. We head up north into southern New Hampshire, just north of where we have that tornado warning. And the rainfall rates are absolutely exceeding 4 inches at the moment, along with that rotation that we were just talking about, the rotation that should continue to move into the northeast towards the Merrimack Valley, into parts of Nashua and Milford, also under the influence of the same rotation tracks that we were just talking about south of it. They started in Princetown or around the area. They made their way through Leominster, Townsend, Pepperell, Hollis, and that rotation hangs on just south of Merrimack here. And Merrimack Road actually had some of that rotation tracks. Let's head into Boston Post Road. We're expected to see these rotation tracks possibly heading into the north as well, as you're under that same area of tornado warnings. The flash flood warnings that stretch for much of Connecticut, heading over Hartford, over Middlesex County in Connecticut, over New Haven, and stretching up into Hampden County. In yellow right here all the way to Worcester, you have your severe thunderstorm warning over southern New Hampshire, and actually now into much of New Hampshire. All the rain that's fallen exceeding 3 inches already in some areas, extending through Laconia, through the Parasidentials, and into the White Mountains. And remember, the topography here is just not helping. You're having heavy rainfall rates that stretch into the mountains. And with that hilly terrain and the additional warnings that we had yesterday regarding the heavy rain, the flash flood warnings, terrain is loose and trees have been affected, are vulnerable, and may fall down as well. And if you add in that wind, which has been pretty strong, another one of those examples right here where the wind may also be gusting near 60 miles per hour over north of Wales and Southbridge, well, you're just adding on to the possibility that you may have additional damage, potential wind damage. And I briefly want to go over that real quick so I can just talk to you about what to expect throughout the rest of your Sunday, because we've been generalizing, right, the potential for downpours and storms, but the intensity intensity of these storms have rapidly increased after 5, 6 a.m. and they have been severe. They have prompted those tornado warnings. The wind damage, that even though you don't have rotation, wherever you have those severe thunderstorm warnings, meaning that you have wind gusting over 50, 55 miles per hour, and you add in that you have plenty of shear in the atmosphere, the rotation in the storms heading in and leading the possibility for some tornadoes. Flooding, again, we have plenty of flood warnings across much of New Hampshire, much of Connecticut. Now it's stretched into western Massachusetts, and additional flood warnings are expected throughout the rest of our Sunday. And I did mention that combination of the saturated soil, the loose soil heading towards the hilly terrain as well. We're expecting to see additional effects of downed trees likely throughout the rest of the afternoon. All right, I'm going to show you another broad view of what we have going on. In green, you start to see off to the west, of course, a heavy rain in the radar here indicated towards southern Connecticut. You have another pocket just north of Tolland, the same one that we were just talking about, the rotation. And then you head on to just west of Nashua, where you have the heavy rain in combination with the wind and the rotation that we were just talking about right here. North of Southbridge and Wells, this is exactly where we're talking about that clash of colors, the green, the red. Again, if you're just tuning in, green indicating running towards the radar, red indicating the movement away from the radar. And you've got that clash right there, the rotation that's still possible, the straight line winds that remain another one of those hazards and threats throughout the rest of the afternoon, with wind damage being another factor to our potential hazards for the rest of this Sunday. The storms keep heading their way into the north-northeast, and this movement will remain into the afternoon. Take a look at the last few hours. Just in the last 3 hours, all of the tri-state area has been affected with the heavy rain, but we're looking at the potential for stronger storms from now through 3 p.m. Remember, we've got tornado watches in effect, and if I show you briefly, the tornado watches are actually colored in red. They stretch across much of New England, covering 5 states out of New England, so Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, much of New Hampshire, all the way to southwestern Maine. The flood watches in effect across practically all of New England, with the exception of Cape Cod and the Islands and far northwestern Vermont. And on top of that, in yellow, you start to see the severe thunderstorm warnings from northern Tolland County into Middlesex County. And then again, you start to see those green colors, bright green colors covering Hartford, Springfield, where we've gotten around 3 inches of rainfall already. And same thing over much of New Hampshire, with rainfall reports over 3 inches for many of us. And we've seen the heavy rain that started last Sunday into Monday of last week, and then another round that we had in the middle of the week. So it's been ongoing, a very difficult week for New England, and being posed with the threat of rotation with these storms, wind damage, is just adding on to the life-threatening conditions that we're going to continue to monitor into the afternoon. So, Pamela, we keep tracking that same rotation over in southern New Hampshire that's been overtaking Hillsborough for a while now, and that rotation seems to hang on. We see that clash in colors right there. So I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to you.
Watching that tornado warning, especially for southern parts of New Hampshire, until 10:45, and we're going to stay on until that has been allowed to expire or dropped, or see if it gets extended. But zooming into the radar right here, it's getting a little more disorganized. There's still tons of heavy rain, still some damaging wind threats. But this is not as tight with the rotation. So that's promising that it's becoming more broad. The thing is, we've been experiencing these storms that have been pulsing. So at one point, you'll get this broad rotation and then it tightens up yet again. So we just have to be on guard all day. Have the weather app at your disposal, wherever you need to be today if you have to go out and about. But as you go out and about, be aware, not only could we see tornado warnings, but we have tons and tons of flash flood warnings. Now, the severe thunderstorm warning, tornado warning you see on here, that takes priority. That's why the flash flood warnings aren't showing up with the query tool. There's one right there, but all across Springfield, all across parts of the Northeast, I mean, all of Connecticut, the western and central part, now central parts, the western ones have been dropped, but all across Hartford, flash flood warnings across almost all of New Hampshire, and a new one has been spread farther to the north as the heavy rain now pivots more north and east. And it looks like the National Weather Service has just dropped that tornado warning. So that has been dropped. We have to wait for it to clear from our computer system, but they see the same thing we do, that the rotation has broadened and it is not as tight with the rotation. So extending the chance, though, for flash flooding in parts of northern New Hampshire, and that new flash flood warning I wanted to show you, that's across far northern parts of New Hampshire. This may be extended into Maine as the day goes on, too. So just a very, very active day here with the flash flooding and the rotation threat and the severe thunderstorm warnings. That severe thunderstorm warning continues across parts of central Massachusetts and northern Connecticut until 11 a.m. Straight line wind damage, a concern with this one. And Matt, back with us too. We've been on all morning, Tanya, Matt, and I. And this one, we've been watching it pulsating just with some rotation and then not so much. And now it's that heavy rain that's just encompassing most of the Northeast here.
Yeah, that's right. And, we're going to continue to watch this over the course of the afternoon. In fact, the tornado watch, meaning conditions favorable for tornado development, will continue all the way out until we get to probably about 3 p.m. That's the time it's issued to be out until right now. So here's what's going on. You can see the big area of rain and thunder that's coming across, right? There are a couple of different areas that we've been focused in on. Of course, you've been focusing so well, Pamela and Tanya, on the tornado warning that's been out across southern portions of New Hampshire, right? That now has just been allowed to come down and expire. So the good news out of that is that we're no longer concerned about an imminent tornado threat with that. And that is this storm cell right here. The tornado warning still marked here till 10:45, but allowed to, it was canceled early because the rotation tended to weaken with this thing. Notice flash flood warnings, though, in green are still up throughout the Queen City of Manchester and in southern New Hampshire for that matter as well. We also continue to follow a severe thunderstorm warning in effect across Worcester County. Now, if you're in Worcester right now, the interesting thing about it is it's raining. There's been a little bit of thunder and lightning. It doesn't seem to be anything damaging, and it's not right now, but there's a storm coming up out of southern Connecticut that's moving its way in your direction. So when you hear about a tornado warning today, because we've now already had about 4 or 5 over the course of the morning, I doubt we're done for the day. A tornado warning is the highest level of alert. It means that a tornado appears imminent. There's 2 reasons for that. One could be because it actually has developed and been spotted. That hasn't happened yet today. The other one is radar. And it's interesting because radar technology allows us to see inside the storm, so we can see as meteorologists, no question that you've got developing rotation. It's tight enough to make a tornado. The question always is whether or not it makes it down to the ground. But you don't know that until it happens. And that's why you get these tornado warnings, meaning you need to take shelter immediately in the basement or lowest level of the home, but it doesn't always lead to a tornado touchdown. We just don't have technology that can see, boom, all the way down to the ground to see if it's just a funnel or if it's actually touched down. So when you hear about these warnings, and again, the one that was out for southern New Hampshire has just expired, but when you hear about these warnings, just know that that's where they're coming from. They're coming from a place of knowing the storm is spinning fast enough to make a tornado. There is a funnel in the sky. It's just a matter of whether or not it'll touch down. Here's a torrential rain on the Everett Turnpike right now. This is a travel hazard. Look, we've got a lot of plans on summer weekends. This, of course, is one of them. And if you're tuning in saying, what do I do in terms of my plans for this? There's a couple things to consider. One is the rain is going to make travel very difficult, and that's going to go on for hours. I don't really see this easing off until we get to the early and middle afternoon. It'll be downpours with 3, 4, 5 inch per hour rainfall rates at times until we get into the later afternoon. And you can see that heavy rain now up and down through Merrimack, New Hampshire, running down through Nashua, going down to the state line. That's the storm that had warranted the tornado warning. That's the storm that now no longer has a tornado warning with it. Is there still some level of rotation? You've seen Tanya and Pamela and me earlier talking about the red and the green showing rotation inside of a storm. What you don't see anymore is that red and green kissing. They're not right up against one another. So because of that, we know, okay, the rotation in the storm might be broad, but it's no longer tight enough to say there's a concern for a tornado. That's why that tornado warning came down, all right? Otherwise, we look in terms of the rotation tracks, and we can follow that. We've got the computer systems tuned to actually show where the rotation is. And you can see there it was extending up toward Merrimack and then kind of falling apart. Debris indicator not showing anything up in the sky, which is certainly good news. In terms of the rainfall rate, this is what I mean about just really the punishing rain up and down the Everett Turnpike, now expanding over I-93 from Londonderry northward up to Manchester. Rainfall rates 2, 3, 4 inch per hour rainfall rates coming down. Last 3 hours, you're talking about 1 to 2 inches of rain. So the ground is waterlogged, and that's why so many flash flood warnings are going to come out. And that brings me to the second impact on your day, which is if you're going to be out driving around, if you're trying to get to different events, right? If you say, I got to go out regardless of what it is, do not drive through that standing water in the road, because if you don't know how deep it is, that's when folks run into problems. This is especially true in places like downtown Worcester. It will be true later on in the morning into the early afternoon as the heavy downpours reach into the Boston area. Here is the storm that's prompted the severe thunderstorm warning from Worcester westward. This storm now just coming up on the Massachusetts Turnpike through Sturbridge. Now, again, red and green, definitely some broad scale rotation, but look at the white in between. This tells us, okay, the wind in the middle is not meeting up. So this is not a storm that we are imminently concerned about getting a tornado warning with. We watch it because in this setup, conditions are favorable. And that's why you've got this big tornado watch across most of the area, except the suburbs south of Boston down through the Cape and the Islands, that's going to run us all the way through 3 p.m. In other words, different from a warning when I told you that's when you get down to the basement. The watch means conditions are favorable for tornado development. So through 3 p.m., we will all be on guard as some of these downpours may develop and blossom into tornadoes or possible tornadoes again. And that's when you get your warning. And that's when you get us breaking in. And speaking of that, my understanding is we're going to be able to come down for a little bit here. I think you've got Meet the Press that's running right now. We will be back with you at 11 o'clock. But, of course, your first alert team, regardless, if we get any type of warning that we believe is life-threatening or threatening to you, we will break in right away and give you an update. You're watching NBC 10 Boston's First Alert weather coverage.